Have you ever been yelled at by your own kid in front of people who suddenly forget how to look at you? That's how tonight's story begins. Welcome. Stay with me for a few minutes, because this isn't about drama for drama's sake. It's about a moment that changes how a woman sees herself and what she does next. New Year's Eve. I walked in late, grocery bags biting into my fingers. Onions, cold plastic. My hands smelled like both. I didn't even get the door fully closed before her voice cut through the room. Not lowered, not softened, just out there. An hour. Her phone tapped against the table, once, twice. No one moved. Do you know how that looks? The music kept playing, too loud. Someone laughed, then stopped when no one joined in. Plates were already set. I noticed there wasn't one for me. I stood there longer than I should have, long enough to feel my face get hot, long enough to realize nobody was going to step in. Not a cousin, not a friend, not even someone pretending to be neutral. I opened my mouth, closed it again. If you're thinking I should have snapped back right there, yeah, I thought that too. I just didn't do it. My name is Lena Carter, 69 years old. I had practiced what I might say on the drive over. Little sentences, calm ones. None of them came out. Silence did. It surprised everyone. It surprised me. She was still standing there, waiting for me to fix it. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for me to shrink and smooth things over, like I always did. I didn't. I set the bags down. Not gently, not hard, just enough to hear them hit the floor. Then I turned around and walked back out. No speech, no tears, no explanation. The cold air hit my face. I don't even remember locking the door behind me. I just remember thinking, very clearly, that something had shifted, and I couldn't undo it now. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her ShaDown. It is inspired by real emotional dynamics, real family conflicts, and real moments of quiet breaking points. But the characters and events are fictionalized for storytelling purposes. I drove home with the radio off, the bags still in the back seat. My phone stayed quiet. And that silence followed me inside, settling in, waiting to see what I would do with it next. When did I realize I wasn't late? You just weren't wanted anymore. No one followed me out. I waited a second by the door, not because I expected an apology, but because my body still thought that's how things worked. That someone would come after me, say my name, ask me to stay. Nothing. What stuck with me wasn't the yelling. It was the chair. No one had pulled one back for me. The table was already set, like the decision had been made before I even arrived. I don't know why that detail lodged itself in my chest, but it did. Hard. I drove home slower than usual. The food slid a little in the back seat every time I stopped. I didn't fix it. Didn't feel like it mattered. At home, I set the dishes down anyway. Same counter, same spot. Habit is a stubborn thing. The kitchen smelled like old coffee and reheated oil, like it always did when I cooked ahead and no one showed up hungry. I stood there with my coat still on. Then I reached for my phone. My thumbs already knew what to type. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was bad. Didn't mean to cause a scene. I stared at the words for a long time, long enough to feel embarrassed by them, long enough to feel tired. Then I erased everything, all of it. The screen went blank. Tell me I'm not the only one who's apologized for something I didn't actually do. The phone stayed in my hand. It buzzed once. Not her, a store alert. I turned it face down like it had offended me. I sat at the table by myself and didn't touch the food. I noticed how quiet the room was without waiting in it. No tension, no bracing for the next comment, just quiet. That was new. I realized something then, sitting there with my coat still on and the food going cold. I had spent years standing around, waiting to be told when it was my turn to sit. Tonight, no one had made space for me, so I stopped trying to fit. What if that night wasn't the first warning, just the loudest one? I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, old conversations lined up like they'd been waiting their turn. "You don't need all this space." That one came from a Sunday afternoon, years back. She'd walked through my living room slow, eyes measuring walls, windows, square footage. I remember nodding like she was right, like space was something I should apologize for. Another one followed, sharper. "Why is everything still in your name?" That was said with a smile. Light, casual. Like it was just paperwork, not a question about my existence. I remember laughing then, making a joke about being old-fashioned. I remember how fast she moved on once I didn't argue. Different years, same words. The refrigerator kicked on and stayed loud, a low hum that wouldn't quit. It got under my skin. I stood up just to check the door, like that would fix it. It didn't. I started seeing the pattern once I stopped trying to soften it. The comments never came when other people were around, never when there might be witnesses. They showed up in kitchens, in cars, in moments where it was just the two of us and I was already tired. "You should think about downsizing. You don't really need to manage all this anymore." Each one landed gentle. Each one pushed a little. I had laughed them off before, shrugged, told myself this was normal, that it meant she cared, that not making a fuss was the grown-up thing to do. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe all that maturity just made me convenient. You ever defend someone who already stopped defending you? I sat back down and let the silence stretch instead of filling it. That was new, too. The more I replayed those moments, the clearer they sounded. Not concern, not curiosity. Positioning. I wasn't being asked. I was being tested. And I had been passing that test for years without even knowing it. What sentence changes everything when you weren't meant to hear it? The door was cracked. Just enough. I wasn't trying to listen. I was passing by with my coat still on, keys in my hand, thinking about whether I'd left the stove on. Her voice came through first. Calm, almost gentle. "She'll sign eventually." I stopped without meaning to. A pause. Then the other half landed. "She doesn't have a choice." No edge to it. No anger. That's what made it worse. Like it was already decided. Like time was the only thing left to manage. My stomach dropped. Not panic. Not even fear. It felt more like cold water straight down the spine. I waited for something to soften it. A joke, a correction, anything that sounded like doubt. Nothing came. I didn't step in. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't knock. I backed away the same way you do when you realize the floor isn't solid where you're standing. I drove home on autopilot. The radio stayed off. My hands felt steady on the wheel, which surprised me. I kept expecting them to shake. At home, I went straight to the bedroom, shoes still on, coat half off. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall like it might explain something. That moment when you realize you weren't confused, you were ignoring things. I replayed the sentence again. Not the words this time, the certainty. The way it assumed I would bend. The way my life had already been sorted into a decision I hadn't agreed to. I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. All the times I'd smiled to move things along. All the times I'd told myself, This was just how families worked. Something shifted right there, sitting on that bed with my shoes still on. The fear didn't disappear. It just stopped running the show. I stood up, took the shoes off, lined them up instead of kicking them aside. It wasn't resolve, not yet. It was something smaller and harder, clarity. And once it showed up, it didn't leave. What sentence changes everything when you weren't meant to hear it? The door was cracked, just enough. I wasn't trying to listen. I was passing by with my coat still on, keys in my hand, thinking about whether I'd left the stove on. Her voice came through first. Calm, almost gentle. She'll sign eventually. I stopped without meaning to. A pause. Then the other half landed. She doesn't have a choice. No edge to it, no anger. That's what made it worse. Like it was already decided, like time was the only thing left to manage. My stomach dropped. Not panic, not even fear. It felt more like cold water straight down the spine. I waited for something to soften it, a joke, a correction, anything that sounded like doubt. Nothing came. I didn't step in. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't knock. I backed away the same way you do when you realize the floor isn't solid where you're standing. I drove home on autopilot. The radio stayed off. My hands felt steady on the wheel, which surprised me. I kept expecting them to shake. At home, I went straight to the bedroom, shoes still on, coat half off. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall like it might explain something. That moment when you realize you weren't confused, you were ignoring things. I replayed the sentence again. Not the words this time. The certainty. The way it assumed I would bend. The way my life had already been sorted into a decision I hadn't agreed to. I thought about all the times I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. All the times I'd smiled to move things along. All the times I'd told myself this was just how families worked. Something shifted right there, sitting on that bed with my shoes still on. The fear didn't disappear. It just stopped running the show. I stood up, took the shoes off, lined them up instead of kicking them aside. It wasn't resolve, not yet. It was something smaller and harder. Clarity. And once it showed up, it didn't leave. What's the first thing you check when trust breaks? I started with a drawer I never opened unless something was wrong. Deed, bank statements, insurance papers, the kind of stuff you keep neat because you're afraid of needing it. I spread everything out on the table. Not dramatic, just quiet, one page at a time. My name was on all of it. The house, the accounts, every line that mattered. No joint signatures. No surprises hiding in the margins. That hit harder than I expected. I made the appointment the next morning. A lawyer a woman from church had used when her sister tried to get clever with a will. He didn't waste time, didn't soften his voice either. His office smelled like burnt toner and old paper. The kind of place where things get decided and nobody pretends it's pleasant. He flipped through my documents without rushing, stopped once, looked up at me. Nothing moves unless you sign. Just that. No lecture, no warning about family, no advice about forgiveness. One sentence, clean, final. Relief came first, fast and sharp, like air after being underwater too long. Then guilt slid in right behind it, heavy, familiar, the kind that tells you you're selfish for wanting to stay standing. Then relief again, stronger this time. I nodded and told him to do what needed to be done. My voice didn't crack. That surprised me. Why does protecting yourself feel like you're doing something wrong? The paperwork took longer than the decision. Initial here, date there. Each page felt heavier than it looked, Not because it was complicated, because it was mine. When I walked out, the sun felt the same. Traffic sounded the same. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the point. I wasn't taking anything from anyone. I wasn't making a scene. I was putting a lock on a door that had been open too long. Back at home, I put the copies in a folder and slid it into the drawer, the same one I'd opened that morning. This time, I closed it without hesitation. I wasn't waiting to be told what came next anymore. What line can't be uncrossed? Even by family? She didn't raise her voice. That was the first thing I noticed. She sat down like this was a meeting she'd scheduled, not a fight she was starting. Hands folded, phone face down. Calm like she'd rehearsed it. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I stayed standing, not on purpose. I just didn't feel invited. Her eyes flicked to the hallway, then back to me, a small smile. "Careful. Don't expect to see the kids if you keep acting like this." The words landed soft. That was the trick. Like they were reasonable, like I'd pushed her into saying them. My hands went cold, not shaking, just numb. I pressed my fingers together so she wouldn't notice. She leaned back, crossed one leg over the other. "People are starting to worry about you." That one came with a pause, the kind meant to let it sink in. The kind that pretends concern while setting a trap. I didn't answer right away. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. Loud, steady. I hated that my first thought was whether I'd done something wrong, whether I'd caused this. I wondered for a split second if I raised this. I hated myself for even thinking it. She watched my face, waiting for the old reaction. The scrambling, the apology, the promise to fix whatever she'd decided was broken. It didn't come. Her smile tightened, just a little. "If you don't want problems, you should think about cooperating." There it was. Clean, clear. No more pretending this was about love or concern or family harmony. If love comes with conditions, what is it really? I finally spoke then, not loud, not sharp. "I'm not trading my peace for access." The air shifted. She sat up straighter. The calm cracked at the edges. "You're choosing this," she said, quick now, defensive. I shook my head once, slow. "No," I told her. "You are." She stood, grabbed her phone. The chair scraped against the floor louder than it needed to. As she walked past me, she brushed my shoulder. Not accidental. That was the moment I knew something had broken for good. And I wasn't the one who broke it. What happens when you stop explaining and start showing? We sat at the table like nothing had happened before. Same surface, same chairs. The space between us felt measured. I didn't start with a speech. I didn't remind her of anything she already knew. I reached into my bag and took out the folder. Gray, thick, ordinary. I slid it across the table. The paper hit the wood louder than I meant it to. Not a slam, just a clean sound that cut through the quiet. She didn't touch it right away. Her fingers hovered, then pulled it closer. One page turned, then another, slower now. The rhythm changed. Her breathing did too. The color drained from her face, not all at once, like a dimmer switch. She opened her mouth, closed it. I stayed still, hands flat on the table. No shaking. That surprised me. A few pages in, she stopped flipping, just stared. The way people do when they realize the floor isn't where they thought it was. "This doesn't make sense." I leaned back, not defensive, not aggressive. "It does," I said. "You just weren't counting on it." She looked up then, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time in a long while. "You locked it." "I protected it." Her jaw tightened. She pushed the folder back like it might bite her. You went behind my back. I nodded once. You went around me. Silence settled again, thicker this time. She glanced toward the door, then back at the papers, like she was checking for exits. Have you noticed calm scares people more than anger? Her voice came out sharper now. So that's it? You think this makes you untouchable? I didn't rush the answer. I didn't need to. It makes me done, I said, with guessing, with fixing, with being managed. She stood up fast enough to knock her chair back. It fell and she didn't bother picking it up. This isn't over. I didn't argue. I gathered the folder and slid it back into my bag. As she walked away, the control she'd carried for years didn't follow her. It stayed on the table, right where I left it. Who are you when manipulation stops working? She came back, quieter, different posture. The folder had done its job, and now she was trying a new angle. I just need a little help, she said, hands open on the table like proof of honesty. We're under pressure. You know how it is. I watched her fingers. They were trembling, not much, enough to notice. You're being unreasonable, she added quickly, like she didn't want silence to sit too long. This didn't have to turn into all of this. That was the blame part, slipped in smooth. Then the tears came, or something close to them. Her voice broke. She rubbed her face with both hands, hard, like she could scrub the moment away. I didn't mean to hurt you. Real? Maybe. I didn't try to decide. Part of me wanted to fold right there, years of instinct kicking in. Fix it, make it easier, say yes just to stop the shaking in her voice. I didn't. I can help, I said, slow and clear. But it's going to be on paper. Limited. No house, no signatures that put me at risk. Her head snapped up. That's it? That's it. She stared at me like she was recalculating, like she was searching for the version of me that would cave if she waited long enough. Is it cruel to help someone without saving them? You're punishing me, she said. I shook my head once. I'm stopping. The room went quiet again. Not heavy like before. Flat. Final. She stood, wiped her face, and picked up her bag. No hug, no last attempt. As she walked out, I stayed seated. For the first time, I wasn't negotiating my place in the room. I was already in it. What if your quiet wasn't weakness, but delay? The days after that were empty in a way I wasn't used to. No calls, no half apologies dressed up as updates. My phone stayed where I left it, instead of following me from room to room. Mornings got quieter. Coffee tasted burnt because I kept forgetting to turn the pot off in time. I didn't rush to fix it. I drank it anyway. Sat there longer than usual, hands wrapped around the mug, letting the day start without commentary. I slept better. That part surprised me. I hated admitting it, even to myself. My body didn't tense up the way it used to when I heard a car door outside or a message buzz on the counter. The waiting had been exhausting. I hadn't realized how much space it took up until it was gone. I missed the kids. That came in waves, little flashes. A drawing still on the fridge, shoes by the door that weren't there anymore. I let myself feel that part. I didn't try to talk myself out of it. What I didn't miss was the tension, the careful wording, the way every conversation felt like a test I didn't know I was taking, the constant checking of my tone, my face, my timing. Peace settled in slowly. Not the warm kind people talk about, more like quiet air after a storm moves on. A little strange, a little lonely. Is peace supposed to feel lonely at first? A neighbor waved one afternoon and asked how things were. I said fine. Not because everything was fixed, but because I wasn't bracing anymore. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped rehearsing answers that no one was asking for. I wasn't winning anything. There was no moment where someone acknowledged the shift, but I wasn't waiting either. And that felt like something solid enough to stand on. What choice can't be undone once you make it? The papers came back, stamped and final. I didn't open them right away, let them sit on the counter like they needed to catch their breath first. Everything was locked now. The house, the accounts, access gone, leverage gone. I didn't call anyone to announce it, didn't wait for a reaction. I'd already done enough explaining for one lifetime. She found out anyway. Of course she did. Her name lit up my phone that evening. I let it ring until it stopped. A message followed, short and sharp. You didn't have to take it this far. I read it once. Then I set the phone face down. The next one came slower. We're family. That one sat there longer. I felt it in my chest. The old pull, the reflex to smooth things over, to give something back, just to make the tension stop. I didn't answer. A week later, she showed up. Not angry, tired. She stood by the door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to cross it anymore. So that's it, she said, looking past me into the house. You're really doing this? I already did, I told her. She swallowed. You're choosing paperwork over people. I shook my head. I'm choosing myself. She waited for more. An apology, a speech, something to negotiate with. It didn't come. If you were in my place, would you live with doubt or live small again? She left without saying goodbye. I closed the door and didn't lean against it this time. I walked back to the table and sat down like I belonged there. I don't know if it was right. I know I won't go back. That has to be enough. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I chose. Now I live with it.